especially if you're trying to survive. And if you're a man trying to provide for your family, you're expending energy. And that can sap your strength enough to where when the night comes, you may not be there in the morning.
They did not remove my husband's clothing. He had but little. They wrapped him in a blanket and placed him in a pile with 13 others who had died, and then covered him up with snow. The ground was frozen so hard that they could not dig a grave. Elizabeth Horrocks Jackson, Martin Company.
The crossing of the North Platte was fraught with more fatalities than any other incident of the entire journey. Josiah Rogerson, Martin Company.
Both the Willie and Martin companies reached, as I can see, a breaking point on the 18th and 19th of October. Interestingly, both at the same time, before the storm struck.
The sum total puts them in a situation where they're in, south central Wyoming, and they can do nothing about their circumstances. They're trapped, and they can't escape. The only way they can get themselves out of the mire or out of the circumstance they're in is to get somebody come and save them.
Brigham Young was aware that there were probably a lot of people coming. He had been informed by Daniel Spencer, who was the superintending agent at Iowa City, that he had sent off 3 groups and that 2 more were expected. No one understood at that point really the depth of the reason for concern. Now, as it was getting later and he hadn't received further word, I don't know if he made the very dangerous assumption that in their wisdom that these agents would have kept them back in Iowa or at the Missouri. He may have assumed that.
October 4th, Franklin D. Richards rode into the Salt Lake Valley with distressing news. There were as many as 1,200 emigrants still out on the plains. The next day, October the 5th, the 55-year-old president of the LDS Church stood at a regularly scheduled church conference before a congregation of thousands and called for an immediate rescue.
Many of our brethren and sisters are on the plains with handcarts, and probably many are now 700 miles from this place, and they must be brought here. Go and bring in those people now on the plains. Brigham Young.
From my perspective, Brigham Young is the most significant factor in the survival of those who actually made it into the valley.
It was Brigham Young's spirit and his determination and his fury, I think, in some cases, that started a massive effort the very day that he found out that so many people were still on the plains.
President Young called for the men, horse, and mule teams to stage an immediate rescue. He asked the women to bring food, blankets, and clothing of any description to fill the wagons.
The sisters stripped off their petticoats, stockings, and everything they could spare right there in the tabernacle. Lucy Messervy Smith, Salt Lake City.
Tuesday, October 7th. The first wagons and teamsters, headed by Captain George D. Grant, began the climb up the steep canyon heading east.
The idea of the rescuers, they're going out and they haven't even got a clue where Willie is and his people, or Martin. It's this idea, we're going to go out and try to rescue these people, but we don't even know what we're facing.
The leaders of the rescue were trail-seasoned men. With them were a select group of young men who had tended cattle, logged, plowed, irrigated, ferried mail, and a few had clashed with Indians.
A better outfit and one more adapted to the work before us I do not think could have possibly been selected if a week had been spent fitting it up. Daniel W. Jones, Rescue.
They left their families in almost destitute situations in Salt Lake. They hadn't gotten their harvest in. They'd had a locust infestation. They hadn't gotten the wood in for the winter, but yet they were willing to go get these people because Brigham Young told them to. And they went. They took their very best animals, knowing that their animals might die, that they might die.
Weeks later, more teams loaded with additional tons of flour and other provisions joined the rescue. Estimates projected that Captain Willie and his company might be found 2 days past Fort Bridger, about 130 miles east of Salt Lake.
October 15th. Our hearts began to ache when we reached Green River, and yet no word of them. Daniel W. Jones, Rescue.
The rescue party kept riding, bewildered that the Handcart companies were so far back on the trail.
This relief party proceeded eastward as rapidly as possible, and in due time passed over the South Pass, the backbone of the continent. Harvey Clough, Rescue.
October 18th. No sign of the Handcart companies. Captain Grant stationed Reddick Allwood, 11 men and 4 supply wagons at South Pass to restock the relief companies when they returned with the emigrants. He had earlier dispatched 4 express riders to find the 2 companies and assure them help was on its way. On horseback, the express riders could make more than 30 miles a day.
As they continued on across southwestern Wyoming and then towards South Pass, the weather had held, but right around the South Pass area we have the weather start falling apart. And just on the east side of South Pass, the rescue teams experience a terrible snowstorm, and they have to take shelter.
The raging winter storm brought the rescuers and both Handcart companies to a standstill. The Willie Company on the Sweetwater and the Martin Company at the North Platte, more than 100 miles apart.
The storm raged with increasing fury until it reached the capacity of a northern blizzard. Harvey Clough, Rescue.
The express riders from Captain Grant's rescue party were riding hard. They finally found the Willie Company camped on the Sweetwater.
October 19th. Met Brother Wheelock and company, who have come to our relief. He reported 40 loads of flour 1 day in advance of us. This was joyful news. Levi Savage, Willie Company.
Being surrounded by snow a foot deep, out of provisions, many of our people sick, and our cattle dying, it was decided that we should remain at our present camp until the supply train reached us. John Chislett, Willie Company.
October 20th. The snow, increasing in depth daily, seemed to drag the life completely out of us all. And from the last crossing of the Platte, we commenced to bury the exhausted, rapidly. Josiah Rogerson, Martin Company.
The express had found the Willie Company out of food, and desperate.
Such craving hunger I never saw before, and may God in his mercy spare me the sight again. John Chislett, Willie Company.
Captain Willie with 21-year-old Joseph Elder left their camp to search for the promised aid. They spent several hours on the trail, uncertain of the rescue wagon's location.
For protection of ourselves and animals, the company moved down the river to where the willows were dense enough to make a good protection against the raging storm from the north. I volunteered to take a signboard and place it at a conspicuous place at the main road. This was designed to direct the express party, who were expected to return about this time, so they would not miss us. I had only been back to camp a short time when 2 men rode up from Willie's Handcart Company. The signboard had done the work of salvation. Harvey Clough, Rescue.
Joseph Elder and Captain Willie would have gone right past the rescuers. You can't see the trail from where the rescuers were.
The report that they get from Captain Willie is that they have to get to these people, and so the very next day they're on their way racing ahead to rescue the Willie Company. So that sign post on the road was definitely a lifesaver.
October 21. Just as the sun was sinking beautifully